some idea. That's the first thought. That's never, ever let her rip, man.
Oh, no. I'm way too refined, Edwin. Way too refined. To the point, it's a really complex situation at the moment for many people. Trying to make sense of it all. It's quite difficult to know. This article highlighted the fact that sellers are flooding the property market, but buyers aren't biting bait. There does seem to be a little bit of a slowdown, but as you say, there are still deals to be done if you know where to look and you get your pricing right. So that's something that's really important to understand. And again, these headlines don't help really, because going into individual properties, individual locations is pretty important. These generic ideas really don't help very much. What we can say, though, of course, is that we've still got very strong population growth. So we had 300,000 people coming over the last year through migration. And with everything else we're seeing around the world, we would expect the migration would continue to be quite strong. That's going to be a bit of a flaw in terms of actually supporting demand for property. But on the other hand, of course, it's worth just reflecting a bit more on the situation with regard to oil. Of course, in Australia, it's fascinating that Australian officials counted petroleum on tankers at sea as part of our days of supply, according to Bloomberg. The situation now, the amount of oil stored at sea, a vital buffer for markets, is running down fast, and 1/3 of that is Iranian. But more broadly, just to say that when you think about oil, let's understand that oil touches pretty much everything. It isn't just the fuel in the car. It isn't just the natural gas. It's pretty much everything. And here's a real pointed example from the Rees Group, who made the point that the plastic pipe and fittings prices are up. And look how much they're up. 36% for HDPE pipe and fittings, 31% up for corrugated stormwater pipe, and PVC pipe and fittings up 28.5%. And it goes on to say, industry is suffering from a lack of supply of raw materials, fuel and freight options, which is driving costs upwards. Now, of course, that's going to have a very significant impact on the price of new builds, if you can still get around to build them. And it's worth just highlighting, of course, it's not just building and construction. It's not just those products and oil, but actually think about food. So this is the food index, and it's worth showing how much the food index is rising following the Brent crude. The truth is that the green market fertilizer prices are up now pretty much to where they were back in 2022. So that's another indicator. This is a much broader set of issues. And that's despite the IEA, of course, releasing the very significant amount of oil that they released. And this is an interesting one from Amy Ramakis. This isn't 2020, as we can't just turn the economy off and then on like what happened with COVID. The level of capital destruction that is happening at the moment means there is no switch to turn back on. 2020 doesn't apply here. I think that's quite an important point. We're in a different environment. So it really does behove on people to, not just go on emotion, as you say, to really try and really understand what is going on, and maybe sometimes just wait and see how some of these things play out. What we can say, though, is that markets, of course, have gone only in one direction, and that's with regard to interest rates. So this is the forward interest rate view, and we're now seeing another rate hike or two priced in by the markets. Now, that may or may not come. I suppose if everything crashes, then they might cut rates. But of course, at the moment, the RBA is signaling higher rates. That's going to put more pressure on households. So you're right. We have to move away from emotion to really understand what is going on. And I guess what we're trying to do in this show is to try and sort of contextualize some of those discussions so that people make better decisions.
Well, 100%, Martin. And this is where, when you recall that commercial a couple of decades ago when used to say oils ain't oils. So this is it takes a different perspective when you start understanding what the crude oil gets refined into and the other properties and other materials that come out of it, right? So when you start understanding that, and then you start piecing it all together, you start figuring out the oils and oils of the property markets as well, and you can't just rely on those helicopter view observations, which a lot of analysts, property commentators, and emotional drum beaters on X and every other platform are pushing out there, the collapse and the fall and the decay of the Australian property market. I'll say, look, that would be true, but we're only playing. We're sort of how can I put it? We're playing. If we were playing with all balls on the court, then it's a different kettle of fish. But as you raise the point of immigration and the numbers, which we'll talk about a bit later on as well, it starts to paint a different picture when you start talking about demand, and then you go back to the basics of demand and supply, and it paints a totally different picture that the headlines don't really understand. And again, we go back to the ignorance of many property commentators, writers, and editors of many publications that are pushing out information just for clicks. Because it's all emotion. Right now, one of the things that or a couple of things. One of the things that aren't discussed, in my opinion, with regards to the potential lockdowns, is what Health Ranger talks about, the energy lockdowns. Are we going to have, as much as the post that you put on earlier said that this isn't 2020 with regards to the pandemic? Really, isn't it? Could it be? Could it be possible? Is it possible that they could do it? Is it probable that they could flick that switch, or is it plausible that they will flick the switch? I mean, we don't know what the governments are going to do right now. We don't know what they're going to be doing, because we know that in the majority governments are compromised, and even the RBA is compromised. Even Christopher Joy said that in one of his publications in one of his commentary last week. He felt strongly that the RBA was compromised in the decision. So who's really pulling the strings, and what's going to require if we start really spiraling downward? What's it going to require for the government to flick the switch? It's been done before, and it was relatively easy. So this is the question, and I guess this is what's in the back of many investors' mind. Apart from everything else, will that switch be flicked again? Because last time that switch was flicked was to the off position. It hurt a lot of investors, hurt a lot of incomes because it takes a bit of time to wind into it, and it takes a bit of time to wind out of it. And it's in that time of winding in and winding out that investors and people that are holding on to property lose a fair bit of money. But what happened post that flicking of the switch was that people pulled the properties off the market, and we got a huge attrition in listing numbers in 21, 22, 23, and we haven't really recovered. We haven't really recovered since, because then it was a pile-on of everything else, other levers that were pulled. So these are the discussions and conversations that you and I can have, because we look at this a little bit more in depth than the superficial emotional headlines. And this is what I call the possibles, probables, or plausibles, and that is, will they flick the switch? And what of property prices, and how will the markets react? And more to the point, how will vendors and buyers then react, or investors, when you've got rental freezes, when you've got no eviction notices or no termination notices to be issued, when you've got extraordinary government assistance to keep people in tenancies, they'll tap into, and potentially access to super in order to keep things going. Because once people stop commuting, or being able to commute and being able to drive their vehicles to work, I mean, as much as the government would like to think that many people are travelling by public transport, I mean, there's certain hours of the day that you can't get onto the bloody things. Even if you tried, you have to push people out of the way in order for you to fit into one of the carriages. Try going down from the mid mountains down into the city at 8:30 in the morning. Let's see if you can get a seat. Let's see if you can even push your way into a bloody carriage. Let alone from your eastern suburbs and from the North Shores, upper North Shores, from your Hornsbys and Asquiths, and also the west and southwest regions. I mean, it's a mess. And then something happens, a branch falls on the railway track, and you're screwed. So these are all the things. These are all the stopples that prevent people from being able to catch public transport. So then the alternative has been, and will continue to be for a very long time, is you've got to drive in. Then you've got to drive from the station to where people live. It's a long way. It's a long way to walk. And buses don't. There are a lot of routes that buses don't cover past a certain hour of the day as well. So you've got all these issues. So we go back to is it plausible that we could end up with energy lockdowns? And if we do, how is the property landscape going to change potentially? These are conversations that need to be had. But this is when, as we spoke last week, I said that this time around, many are going to just simply pull back from all the uncertainty, because a lot of investors have learned,